Good evening to everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the topic dysphagia. First, let's discuss about the definition of dysphagia, which is difficulty in swallowing either solids or for liquids, which may be either in the oropharyngeal region or in the esophageal region. Before going to the physiology of the swallowing, we have to know about the other terminologies, mainly aphasia, which means there is complete inability to swallow. You can see here in the esophageal obstruction where there is maybe either due to the foreign body or maybe due to the food bolus impaction. And the next terminology is orinophagia, which means painful swallowing. It may be either due to oral ulcers, which may be either caused either due to the trauma or maybe due to the infectious causes or maybe due to drug induced. And now coming to the globus pharyngeus, which is a sensation of the lump present in the throat, but there is no association of painful swallowing and there is no difficulty in swallowing. Irrespective of the swallowing, the person may have a sensation of the lump in the throat. These three terminologies you have to differentiate from with the dysphagia. Now coming to the physiology of the swallowing. Actually, the act of swallowing is a complex process which includes voluntary phase as well as the involuntary phases. So the oral phase is referred as a voluntary phase, which is mediated to the cortex, whereas the pharyngeal phase and the esophageal phases are involuntary phases, which are mediated to the brainstem. Now coming to the mechanism of swallowing, initially when there is an intake of the food, the efferents will nothing but the sense receptors which are present in tongue, soft palate, and the pharyngeal wall or the postpharyngeal wall will be activated by the nerves 9th and 10th cranium, and there is a swallowing center in the pontine reticular region which will be activated, and there will be events from the 9th, 10th, 12th, and 7th and the 5th cranial nerves, and the process of swallowing will be started. And now, coming to the physiology of swallowing, first it is divided into three phases, namely oral phase, pharyngeal phase, and the esophageal phase. Coming to the oral phase, when there is an intake of the food, uh, in this phase, there will be mixture of the food with the saliva, and there will be mastication of the food particle and the formation of bolus. Here, it is mediated by the 5th, 7th, and 12th cranial nerves. And next phase is pharyngeal phase. In the oral phase, the food will be transmitted to the pharynx. During the transfer of the food, the tongue will be elevated and moves upwards so that the bolus will be more pushed backwards. And during this, to prevent the entry into the nasopharynx, the soft palate will be moved upwards and that gets elevated. And during this process, the epiglottis here in the first time, the epiglottis is in the elevator posture, whereas during the pharyngeal phase, the epiglottis will be moved backwards and remains posteriorly to prevent the entry of the food particles into the trachea. And now there is a contraction of the suprahyoid muscles, mainly genohyoid and the stylohyoid muscles, which helps in the elevation of the larynx along with the hyoid bone. And during the elevation, the upper esophageal sphincter will also be opened by these muscles, and there will be entry of the food from the pharyngeal region to the esophageal region. And this phase is involuntary phase, and this is mediated by the cranial nerves 9th and the 10th cranial nerves. And the next phase is esophageal phase, in which there is a food passage from the pharynx to the esophagus. In the esophagus, there will be peristaltic contractions, which are nothing but the primary peristalsis. And during the passage of the food, there will be lower esophageal sphincter will be relaxed and the food bolus will be entered into the stomach. So during the entry, there will be, it is also a involuntary phase of the swallowing. During swallowing, there will be stoppage, temporary stoppage of the expiratory phase of the respiration. And after the swallowing process ends, the expiratory process follows. And now coming to the disorders of the dysphagia, it has been mainly divided into oropharyngeal dysphagia as well as esophageal dysphagia. Coming to the oropharyngeal dysphagia, it includes mainly oral and from the pharyngeal phase and up to the level of the upper esophageal sphincter. The main reason why upper esophageal sphincter is involved in the oropharyngeal dysphagia is upper esophageal sphincter is combined musculature of the cervical esophagus, as well as the musculature of the inferior constrictor of the pharynx, that is cricopharyngeus. So we have included upper esophageal sphincter under the oropharyngeal dysphagia. And the esophageal dysphagia, it includes either cervical and the thoracic and the distal esophagus. And here, in case of oropharyngeal and the esophageal, there were differences in the musculature. That is, in case of oropharyngeal, it is lined by the striatal muscles, whereas the esophageal is lined by the smooth muscles. Whereas there is innervation difference is also seen in case of oropharyngeal and the esophageal. In the oropharynx, it is lined by the lower motor neurons of the cranial nerves, whereas esophagus, it is lined by the excitatory or the inhibitory neurons of the esophageal myotic plexus, which is actually mediated by the preganglionic neurons of the dorsal motor nucleus of the vagus, which is located in the medullary. Now coming to the causes of the oropharyngeal dysphagia, they may be either structural or neurological or iatrogenic. Coming to the structural causes, it may be either congenital causes or it may be either acquired causes. Coming to the congenital causes, it may be either due to cleft palate or cleft lip, oronasal fistula, or due to laryngomalacia or tracheoesophageal fistula or dentition abnormalities. Coming to the acquired causes, it may be either due to infections, or it may be due to neoplastic conditions, or it may be due to diverticular reasons, or it may be due to extrinsic compressions. So coming to the infections, they may be tonsillitis or adenoiditis, or they may be paratonsillar abscess or acute epiglottitis, Ludwig's angina, or retropharyngeal or parapharyngeal abscess, or there may be inflammatory bowel disease, mainly the Crohn's disease. Otherwise, they may be caused by either by viral, fungal, or the bacterial infections. Coming to the neoplastic conditions, it may be caused either by the carcinoma of tonsils or soft palate or nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Coming to the diverticular conditions, it may be due to the Zenker's diverticulum. Here in the Zenker's diverticulum, it mainly occurs in the elderly age people. This is mainly due to the cricopharyngeal muscle stenosis, which leads to the inability to relaxation of the upper esophageal sphincter, such that there will be increased pressure of the hypopharynx. Due to increased pressure, there is a weakness in the esophagus, mainly in the hypopharynx, that is Killian's dehiscence. There will be a formation of the diverticular region. So this is the main mechanism under the Jenkins diverticulum. Whereas coming to the extrinsic compressions, there may be a phase of cervical osteophytes or maybe a phase of cervical osteolysis. These are the structural causes which causes the oropharyngeal dysphagia. And now coming to the neurogenic causes, it may be involved either in the cortical or the nuclear regions of the brain, which includes mainly cerebrovascular accidents. In the young child, it may be due to cerebral palsy, or in the older, mainly it may be due to multiple sclerosis or Parkinsonism disease or motor neuron disease, which may cause either pseudobulbar palsy or the bulbar palsy, or it may be caused due to the infection causes like rabies and tetanus. In case of rabies and tetanus, as there is most spasmodic contractions of the muscles, the patient may present with dysphagia. And the peripheral nerve disorders, mainly either due to nerve injury or maybe due to diabetic neuropathy or maybe due to GBS. As in GBS, there is most commonly can be presented with bilateral facial palsy. The patient may present with oropharyngeal dysphagia. And now coming to the neuromuscular junction disorders, it may be due to autoimmune disorders such as myasthenia gravis or Lambert-Eaton syndrome. In myasthenia gravis, as due to more straining pattern, the patient may be presented with difficulty in chewing or difficulty in swallowing. Whereas it may be caused by infections such as diphtheria. In case of diphtheria, there will be soft palate paralysis, which leads to dysphagia, whereas the drugs which causes neuromuscular junction disorders are aminoglycosides. And there may be muscle disorders, mainly most causes myositis, which includes either dermatomyositis or polymyositis, or it may be caused by primary myopathy disorders, such as oculopharyngeal disorder. This oculopharyngeal disorder is a rare genetic disorder, but which occurs mainly in the age of 40 to 50 years. But, here, the patient may present with ocular symptoms like ptosis, and the next then they present with difficulty in swallowing, and then they may proceed with proximal limb weakness also. Whereas considering the endocrine disorders which causes proximal myopathy includes Cushingoid syndrome and the thyroid myopathy, which may be either cause either hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. And we can also have nutritional disorders like vitamin B12 deficit. With vitamin B12 deficit, as there is an involvement of the corticobulbar tract, they may present with pseudobulbar palsy, which leads to dysphagia. And now coming to the iatrogenic causes, it may be either surgery induced or it may be radiation induced or maybe drugs induced. The most common drugs which causes dysphagia is NSAIDs because there is a more chance of mucosal damage and cause ulceration. So the patient may present with painful ulcers and they may complain with difficulty in swallowing. And the other drugs includes beta blocker or chemotherapeutic agents such as methotrexate and 5-fluorouracil. And these are the main causes for the oropharyngeal dysphagia. Apart from this, we have minor causes including mastication disorders. In mastication disorders, mostly it involves the nerve disorders. Apart from it, there may be a fracture of the mandible, or there may be a cause of trismus, or there may be a cause of temporomandibular joint dislocation. And there may be a cause of lubrication disorders, that is xerostomia, which may be induced either radiation therapy or due to surgery or due to drugs like anticholinergic agents or due to connective tissue disorders like Sjogren syndrome and the rheumatoid arthritis. These are the main causes which causes oropharyngeal dysphagia. Now coming to the esophageal dysphagia. In esophageal dysphagia, it may be either due to structural causes or due to the motility disorders. Coming to the structural causes, it may be either intrinsic cause or it may be due to the extrinsic cause. Coming to the intrinsic cause, it may be either due to foreign body or food bolus impaction, or it may be due to the strictures. These strictures can be formed due to prolonged GERD, that is peptic strictures, or it can be formed due to pill induced, mainly doxycycline or tetracyclines or NSAIDs, and the vitamin C and the FES4. As these drugs can, they have low pH, so they can cause mucosal injury and they cause pill-induced esophagitis. And next, it may induce next structural causes includes either benign tumors or malignant tumors. In case of benign tumors, you may have leiomyoma or lipoma. In case of malignant tumors, you can have either squamous cell carcinoma or adenocarcinoma or melanoma. And next thing, most common cause is esophageal rings. That is, most common is Schatzki's ring or esophageal webs. Most common causes um, uh, Plummer-Vinson syndrome, which is nothing but the hypopharyngeal webs. Next common cause is eosinophilic esophagitis. Now coming to the extrinsic causes, it may be present either in the thorax region or in the abdominal region. Coming to the thorax region, they may have vascular anomalies like dysphagia lusoria, in which there is aberrant right subclavian artery. And next thing is aortic aneurysm, or there may be pulmonary sling. In this pulmonary sling, normally the pulmonary artery, it will be divided into the right pulmonary artery and the left pulmonary artery. Whereas in the pulmonary sling, the right pulmonary artery itself gives the left pulmonary artery, which leads to dysphagia. And the next one is aortic aneurysm, or maybe due to coarctation of the aorta. These are the vascular anomalies which can cause esophageal dysphagia in the thorax, and maybe due to thyroid enlargement. Even it can be caused by either solitary nodule or maybe it can be caused by multinodular goiter. And there may be enlargement of the lymph nodes in the mediastinum. This lymph nodes enlargement can be either caused by infectious causes like TB or histoplasmosis, or due to carcinomas like metastasis or due to lung carcinomas. And the other cause is lymphomas. Now coming to the abdominal esophagus, maybe due to hiatus hernia or maybe due to gastroesophageal junctional tumors. And coming to the motility disorders, this motility disorders mainly occurs due to the inhibiting neuron or the excitatory neurons defect. Inhibitory neurons mainly they secrete nitric oxide or VIP, whereas excitatory neurons mainly they secrete acetylcholine or the substance P. So in case of inhibitory neurons, if there is a loss of inhibitory neurons, there will be loss of inhibition, deglutition inhibition, which may be either involved either in the body or maybe involving the body as well as the lower esophageal sphincter. If alone the body is involved, it can cause diffuse esophageal spasm. If the body and the sphincter is involved, then it causes eclasia cardia. Whereas if there is increased activity, normally whenever there is a food bolus enters in from the esophagus to the stomach, there will be a transient relaxation period which will be around 30 seconds. But whenever there is increased activity of the inhibitory neurons, there will be inappropriate increase in the transient relaxation period, which can lead to GERD. And now, this is about the inhibitory neurons abnormality. And now coming to the excitatory neuron abnormality, if there is an increase in activity, it can lead to hypertensive peristalsis, which is referred as nutcracker esophagus or hypertensive lower esophageal sphincter. And the most of the patients in these cases, they may present with chest pain. And next one is if there is this decreased activity, they may present with hypotensive peristalsis or hypotensive lower esophageal sphincter. And most of these cases, they may present with reflex esophagitis. Now coming to the eclasia. In case of eclasia, it may be either caused by primary causes or maybe by the secondary causes. The primary cause, most common cause is idiopathic, or it may be autoimmune disorder, and it may be also caused by familial disorders like AAA syndrome, which includes alacrimia or achlorohydria and eclasia. In some studies, they have shown that in case of eclasia, there is increased viral titer bodies of measles and varicella zoster, which can cause eclasia. And next, the secondary causes include Chagas disease, which is caused by Trypanosoma cruzi, and gastroesophageal junctional tumors. These gastroesophageal junctional tumors, they cause invasion of the esophagus and they cause destruction of the neuronal bodies, which may lead to the eclasia cardia. And now coming to the hypotensive lower esophageal sphincter, it may be caused by idiopathic causes or the most common cause in the young females with Raynaud's syndrome, maybe scleroderma. And it may be either caused by drugs such as smooth muscle relaxants and the anticholinergics. And now coming to the approach, um, initially, history is very important in this case. First, about the onset of the symptoms, whether it is acute or chronic. If it has an acute onset, then mostly you have to think about either foreign body or food bolus impaction. When next coming to the duration, if the person has prolonged history of GERD or eclasia, then you have to think about either peptic strictures or it may be due to esophageal carcinoma also. And now there are two conditions where the patient may present with prolonged histories, namely Schatzki's ring and eosinophilic esophagitis, where there is a long history around about 4 to 6 years. The patient may present with symptoms of reflux esophagitis or symptoms of the dysphagia. Now, considering the age, now if a young child presents to emergency with history of fever and there is a drooling of the saliva and if there is a difficulty in swallowing, first you have to rule out acute epiglottitis. So, and the next condition may be presence of lymph node enlargement along with history of fever, and then you have to rule out tonsils or the adenoids. And next, if the patient is adult, young woman, then you have to rule out it may be either psychiatric disorder or it may be an autoimmune disorder. And in case of elderly, if they present with the dysphagia, mostly it may be neuromuscular disorders like CBA, or it may be due to diverticular disorders like Zenker's diverticulum, as there will be muscular atrophy in the aging people. And next, about the location of the obstruction. Blindly, if the patient present with the history of foot bolus above the clavicle, you can mostly think of the oropharyngeal dysphagia. If it's below the clavicle, then you have to mostly think of the esophageal dysphagia. And now about the type of food, whether it may be solids or solids and liquids or for the both. And you have to ask the patient whether it is progressive or whether it is intermittent dysphagia. And now, based on the symptoms itself, we can divide whether it is a oropharyngeal dysphagia or whether it is a esophageal dysphagia. So first, based on the history, first you have to ask the patient whether there is stuck of the foot within less than 1 second, then mostly it is considered as oropharyngeal dysphagia. And there will be associated symptoms like cough during swallowing, choking during swallowing, or inability to swallow, or there may be drooling of the saliva, or there may be issue of retention of the foot, or there may be nasal regurgitation, or there may be recurrent chest infections, and the patient may be present with a history of clearing throat repeated episodes. Then you have to think mostly of the oropharyngeal dysphagia. In case of oropharyngeal dysphagia, the most common causes neuromuscular disorders. So first you have to identify if there is any neuromuscular defects in this case. If there is a neuromuscular defect, then you have to think it is as oropharyngeal motor dysphagia. Whether if the neuromuscular disorders were absent, then mostly it comes under the structural dysphagia. And now coming to the esophageal dysphagia. In case of esophageal dysphagia, the mostly patients will be uh, presenting with the symptoms that after they were able to swallow or they will be able to initiate the swallow, but after many seconds they may be uh, foot stuck in the throat or in the chest, or there may be history of the weight loss, or there may be history of the halitosis, or there may be history of the recurrent chest pains, and they may also consider the history of saying of there may be history of difficulty in swallowing of solids or difficulty in swallowing of solids or liquids. So um, if the patient presents with only hello, uh, if, if the patient presents with dysphagia to solids only, then you have to think it is mainly due to structural disorders. So it may be either due to intermittent or it may be due to progressive. In case of intermittent, it may be due to Schwarzkopf's ring or eosinophilic esophagitis. Whereas it is progressive, then you have to think about peptic strictures or you can think about carcinoma. Whereas both for solids or liquids, then you have to think mostly of motor dysphagia, whether it is intermittent or progressive. So if there is an intermittent, then it is mostly of diffuse esophageal spasm. Whereas if it's progressive, then you have to rule out eclasia cardia or scleroderma. This is how you have to approach whether it's a oropharyngeal or the esophageal dysphagia based on the symptoms itself. And now the other history you have to consider is whether history of any medications, because most of the patients they may be using a history of NSAIDs or history of using beta blockers, which can cause esophagitis or it can cause ulcers. So, and whether there is a history of repeated episodes of ulcers. So, if there is a history of repeated episodes of ulcer, you have to rule out either it's an autoimmune disorder or it may be drug induced. As in case of drug induced, there is a fixed drug eruption where whenever there is an intake of the same drug, there will be most chances of the oral or the mucosal ulcerations on the repeater sites. Whenever you stop the drug, there will be stoppage of the ulcerations, and there will be and the history of halitosis or a history of previous surgery or history of any change in voice or history of vaccination, whether they were vaccinated or not, and the history of atopy or allergic rhinitis or history of addictions, maybe tobacco chewing or alcohol or cigarette smoking, and the history of immunocompromise. Why we have to rule the history of immunocompromise? They may be on oral examination, you may find curry white lesions, which may be caused due to history of immunocompromise due to candidiasis. And now coming to the examination. First, initially you have to examine the cutaneous infection, cutaneous examination. In case of cutaneous examination, you can have rashes like Gottron's papules or Gottron's rash in order to differentiate dermatomyositis or polymyositis, or you can have a Scholl sign or the V sign, or in case you can have pyoderma gangrenosum or erythema nodosum also to differentiate it from the Crohn's disease. And now coming to the eye examination, In case of eye examination, you have to rule out whether there is a conjunctivitis or scleritis, to rule out autoimmune disorders, or to rule out inflammatory bowel disease syndromes. And now coming to the oral examinations. In oral examination, first you have to examine the temporomandibular joint, and then you have to examine the orally whether is there any dentition problems, and you have to check mucosal ulcers, oral and uh, buccal mucosa for any presence of any ulcers, and you have to check for tongue. Is there any discoloration over the tongue, or is there any formation of curdy white lesions which may be occurred due to the candidiasis? In case of ulcers, which may be painful, it may be due to infectious causes like herpes simplex virus or cytomegalovirus. In such cases, you have to also look for vesicles present over the tympanic membrane or the ear ossicles. Next, while examining the palate, you have to check for any petechial hemorrhages in order to rule out infectious mononucleosis or scarlet fever, or in case of measles. And you have to look for anterior and the posterior pillars of the pharynx in order to know whether there is an enlarged tonsils or any erythema, or there is deviation of the uvula. As in case of paratonsillar abscess, there may be deviation of the uvula to the other side, and there may be erythema over the region. And in case of posterior pharyngeal pillars, you have to do indirect laryngoscopy, and there may be mass present which may be extending from the nasopharynx to the oral, which may be present in the young adults, mainly the nasopharyngeal carcinoma. And now coming to the neck examination. In case of neck examination, you have to check for lymph node enlargement, as jugular lymph nodes can be enlarged in case of tonsillitis, and you have to palpate if there is any neck masses like thyroid gland, or any neck infections or neck infections, or is there any mass. And when you palpate the mass, there is decreasing in the size of the mass, then you can rule out and the patient age is elderly, then you can rule out it as juncus diverticulum. And while auscultation, if you hear a gurgling sound, then definitely you can think it was diverticular disease. And you have to look for any joint deformities, and if there is a presence of Raynaud's phenomenon, then you can definitely, if the patient is having repeated episodes of the chest pain with Raynaud's phenomenon, then you can definitely think about the autoimmune disorders such as scleroderma. And you have to check nails for cholinergia, as in case of Plummer-Vinson syndrome, they may be having severe iron deficiency anemia, which can cause cholinergia. And you have to look nails for paranoia, as in case of candidiasis infection, or in case of issue of immunocompromise, there may be disseminated candidiasis. And you have to look for clubbing also, as in case of inflammatory bowel disease, the patient may present with clubbing. And now coming to the neuromuscular neurology examination, first you have to look for a cranial nerve examination, mainly fifth cranial nerve. You have to elicit the jaw jerk, and which can be exaggerated in pseudobulbar palsy. And you have to look for jaw deviation. In case of the jaw will be deviated towards the paralytic side of the body, and you have to also check for the sensory loss over the face. These are the main things you have to check in the fifth cranial nerve. And next one is seventh cranial nerve. Seventh cranial nerve, you have to mainly check for the closure of eyes to elicit Bell's phenomena, and also for the blowout cheeks to check for the buccal muscle strength, such that in if there is a retention of the foot, this mainly indicates the seventh cranial nerve palsy. And if there is any deviation of mouth, it mainly towards the opposite side of the paralysis, there will be a deviation of the mouth. And now coming to the ninth and 10th cranial nerve palsy, you have to check for palatal reflex. While checking for the palatal reflex, you have to uh, depress the tongue by tongue depressor and ask the patient to say Whenever the patient says there will be elevation of the soft palate and the uvula. If there is unilateral palatal palsy, there will be no elevation of the soft palate or the uvula, and the uvula will be deviated to the healthy side. And whenever and the next thing is you have to check for gag reflex. during you have to stimulate the pharynx. If there is a trickling or sensations, or if there is a contraction of the pharynx, then you can rule out 9th and 10th cranial nerve palsy. If it is exaggerated, then you have to think of pseudobulbar palsy, and if it is decreased, you have to think of LMN palsy. And now about the 12th cranial nerve palsy. In case of you have to examine the tongue whether there is atrophy or whether there is paralysis of the tongue. You have to ask the patient to protrude the tongue. After protrusion, if there is a deviation to the paralytic side, then mostly indicates there is a 12th cranial nerve palsy. And now you have to examine other cranial nerves, mainly third, fourth, and fifth, in order to differentiate myasthenia gravis and the oculopharyngeal dysphagia. And now, because the patients may present either with ptosis along with the dysphagia. And now, you have to auscultate and rule out respiratory causes and the serious causes. In case of respiratory causes, mainly you have to rule out TB as well as bronchial asthma, because in case of eosinophilic esophagitis, mostly the patients will have history of atopy or history of asthma in the family, or asthma in the family. In case of serious cases, if there is a history of MS, then it can cause left atrial enlargement, which can cause the esophageal dysphagia. So you have to look out for any murmur, and you have to look out in the respiratory causes for any bronchial asthma, or and also for the TB. And in case of abdominal examination, you have to uh, feel for any mass in the right lower quadrant. If there is any mass in the right lower quadrant, it mainly suggests of inflammatory bowel disease, that is Crohn's disease. These are the total examinations of the patient. And coming to the investigations, if the patient presented with a repeated history of the chest pain, the first thing is to do is ECG. In the ECG, if there is no abnormality and if you have ruled out cardiogenic chest pain, then you can consider chest X-ray. In chest X-ray, you can see um, there may be enlargement of the mediastinum in case of eclasia, or they may be absent of the gas bubble, and there may be air fluid levels you can see in case of the eclasia. At the same time, you can see in the parapharyngeal abscess, there is a enlargement of the retropharyngeal space, and in case of the epiglottis, you can have a thumb sign. And whereas in the chest X-ray itself, you can know whether there is a lymph node enlargement, or there is any cavitatory lesions or any consolidation lesions present in the chest X-ray. And at the same time, you can also rule out whether there is a presence of cricopharyngeal bar. And in the chest X-ray itself, if the patient is having MS, if the patient is having left atrial enlargement, there will be presence of double density sign. So in this way, you can rule out within the chest X-ray what are the causes for the dysphagia. And the next, if the chest X-ray is normal, then you have to consider barium swallow. Even in case of oropharyngeal dysphagia or in the esophageal dysphagia, in both the cases, barium swallow is better when compared to the endoscopy, because endoscopy can lead to perforation. So initially, you have to start the patient with barium swallow. In case of barium swallow, in case of eclasia, you can have a proximal dilated esophagus with bird beak appearance, whereas in case of diffuse esophageal spasm, you can have corkscrew esophagus. But in case of diffuse esophageal spasm, it is mainly occurs in the females, either due to the emotional stress disorder or due to cold intake. So in case if the patient is not having any symptoms, in order to provocate it, you have to induce cold swallows and then take the barium swallow. Then you will have corkscrew esophagus. And now, if the barium swallow shows anterior indentation of the esophagus, then you have to think of pulmonary piercing or left atrial enlargement. If there is a posterior indentation, then you can have to think of aberrant sacroiliac artery. And in the barium swallow itself, when there is a dislocation of the aorta, then you can have reverse street sign. Then coming to the upper GI endoscopy, in the endoscopy, mainly evaluates any structural disorders in this, such as maybe webs or maybe the rings or maybe presence of any strictures. And if during endoscopy, if you have tracheal-like rings, it mainly suggestive of eosinophilic esophagitis. And if you see a curdy white lesions, then it's suggestive of esophageal candiditis. And now, if the upper endoscopy is also normal, um, we have to consider 24-hour pH monitoring. In case of 24 pH monitoring, if the pH is more than 4.5, then you have to think of GERD. And now, if the 24 pH monitoring is also normal, then you have to consider about the manometry. In case of manometry, if there is hypertensive peristalsis, as such as in nutcracker esophagus, there will be raised of pressure around 180 mm of Hg. But as such in diffuse esophageal spasm, which may be we can provocate the situation, nutcracker esophagus is provocative. So you have to prolong the manometry till the patient has the symptoms. And now you can also differentiate the eclasia from scleroderma through the manometry. In eclasia, you can have lower esophageal sphincter relaxing pressure will be high, whereas in scleroderma, you will not have any relaxing pressure increased. And now, if everything is normal, then consider esophageal biopsy. In case of esophageal biopsy, you can rule out whether there may be any carcinoma conditions or whether there can be any infectious causes. So in esophageal biopsy, if you find greater than 15 eosinophils, then you have to think of eosinophilic esophagitis. And if you find any Rastine positive bacteria, then you have to think of H. pylori induced. And now this is a X-ray of retropharyngeal abscess in which this retropharyngeal space is enlarged. And this is a case of acute epiglottis where you can see the thumb sign. And this is the perineum swallow of the eclasia cardia where there is proximal dilated esophagus with bird appearance. And this is the barium swallow of the diffuse esophageal spasm where you can have prop screw esophagus. And these are the investigations you have to perform mainly in the oropharyngeal and the esophageal dysphagia. Coming to the blood investigation, you have to repeat routine blood investigations. Along with it, you have to consider ESR, CRP, and creatine kinases. ESR, CRP may be elevated either in the inflammatory causes or maybe in the autoimmune disorders, or the creatine kinase can be elevated in case of myositis such as dermatomyositis and the polymyositis. And you have to also send for autoimmune profile, mainly for the scleroderma, such as anti-centromere antibodies or anti-topoisomerase antibodies, and also for the ANA profile. And next, you have to consider for thyroid function test and the peripheral smear to differentiate whether it is microcytic hypochromic anemia or macrocytic hypochromic anemia. Whenever the patient has a history of atopy, then you have to also consider serum IgE, because in case of eosinophilic esophagitis, there is a chance of increasing of serum IgE levels. And next, you have to consider CT neck to differentiate any neck masses, and you have to consider CT chest to differentiate any mediastinal masses or any lung masses or any lung pathology. And now coming to the management, in case of dysphagia, the main complications were they may be present with symptoms of dehydration, or they may be present with symptoms of airway obstruction, or they may be present with recurrent infections. So the main management includes hydration of the patient and the prevention of the aspiration and maintenance of the airway. And you have to also consider dietary changes in which thickened liquids can be given when compared to the thin liquids, as thin liquids are more prone to aspiration and leads to aspiration pneumonitis. And you have to also advise the patient uh, uh, after intake of the food at least to sit at least for 1 to 3 hours, and based on the symptoms or based on the underlying cause, you have to treat the cases. In case of eclasia, you can give the drugs such as calcium channel blockers or nitrates. If it not settled, then you can consider surgery such as pneumatic dilatation or Hellas myotomy. And the recent advance in surgery is per oral esophageal myotomy. And in case of diffuse esophageal spasm, as it may be caused by emotional stress. You have to reassure the patient. If it is intolerable, then you can consider smooth muscle relaxants. If it is intolerable, then you can consider long axis myotomy. In case of eosinophilic esophagitis, mainly, initially you have to consider PPIs as they present mainly with the GERD. With PPI, if the patient recovers well, even in the clinical symptoms or in the biopsy, then you can consider PPI. If the patient does not improve with 2 months of treatment, then you have to think of starting topical or the systemic steroids. And you have to also consider food changes in this, as the patient may have food allergies. And in case of oropharyngeal dysphagia, as it mainly due to the neuromuscular disorders, you can consider nasogastric feeding, or you can consider jejunal tube feeding, you can gastrotomy feeding. And in case of diverticular disorder, you can consider for cricopharyngeal divertomy or cricopharyngeal diverticulopexy. And in case of some people who present with no difficulty in swallowing, no painful or swallowing, irrespective of the swallowing, when they say the sensation of the lump, first they may be rule out GERD. So you have to treat first initially with the PPI. Even if the patient does not settle, then you have to reassure the patient. Even if the patient does not settle, then you can try for low dose tricyclic antidepressants. And now, most of the patients, they may present with hoarseness of voice due to neuromuscular disorders. Then you can consider speech therapy. Whenever there is a myasthenia gravis, you can either consider IVIG or plasmapheresis. Whenever there is oculopharyngeal dystrophy, then you have to consider for cricopharyngeal myotomy. In case of autoimmune disorders, you can use steroids or monoclonal antibodies like infliximab and rituximab, and anti-malarial drugs in SLE such as hydrochloroquine. And in case of cancers, you can treat either with radiotherapy or surgery. Thank you.
That was a very good, extensive and a detailed presentation, ma. You almost covered everything. I don't have nothing much to add. So basically, regarding the causes of dysphagia, the patient, you have to ask for the duration. If it is acute, it is most probably likely to be a severe. You ask the patient if it is an acute history associated with the reason of classifying dysphagia as oropharyngeal dysphagia and esophageal dysphagia. You ask for if it is oropharyngeal dysphagia, you must ask for associated symptoms like aspiration, regurgitation, and associated ENT symptoms. If everything is acute, then it is more likely to be a CV. And why that is important? Because again, it is going to be a posterior circulation stroke. That is again very much important, because it is high likely that the patient is going to be worsened either because of the CVA or much more likely to be because of aspiration. So you have to be very, very wary of that patient. A posterior circulation, more likely, one of the most common CVAs that you see is a lateral medullary syndrome. One of the presenting manifestations of lateral medullary syndrome can be dysphagia, with the dysphagia, dysarthria, and giddiness. Okay, so you will forget all this dysphagia and dysarthria and look at the giddiness alone. You ask for a CT brain. The CT brain turns out to be normal, then you don't even admit the patient. That's what happens. So if the patient is presenting you with the giddiness or dysphagia and dysarthria, it is highly likely it's an acute presentation to be a CVA. So always be wary of that. So, and if one of the other presenting manifestations, as you said, for dysphagia is chest pain. Do you know what is the most common cause of chest pain? First, yes. Do you think how much percent it is? GERD accounts for almost 65% of your chest pain, and the remaining cardiac only accounts for less than 30%. So even then, you need to take an ECG. Why is that? Because again, the cause of death could be an MI. So much more likely to be an MI. So again, you have to take in, just because GERD is the most common presentation and the history is suggestive of GERD does not mean that you should take an ECG. When the patient is presenting with the emergency in the midnight, it is always imperative that they take an ECG and an X-ray to rule out everything. Okay. So again, inferior wall MI can present as anything, even as diarrhea, because of autonomic overactivity. Okay. So you almost covered almost all the causes, but you forgot one of the most important causes, common causes which we see in our hospital. And what is that? Donors. First years, anyone else? நேரம் நீங்க பார்த்துருப்பீங்க அந்த காசு நிறைய. எம்ஜி எதுக்குப்பா அடிக்கடி ஓஜிடிஸ்கோபி போட சொல்றீங்க? acute presentation, you ask for an OGD, they come and put your OGD. Caustic injury, ma? Yeah.
Okay.
In our hospital, it is one of the most common indications. Okay, caustic injury is very, very common in our. So in a case of caustic injury or acid injection, no? So acid injection, when do you put on OGD-scopy? You try to put it within 48, maximum by 96 hours in case of special indications. If the patient has crossed the 96 hours, then you have to wait. If the patient has dysphagia, you have to put a feeding jejunostomy and you have to review after 21 or 28 days. If the patient is able to swallow, well and good, then ask the patient to swallow. Okay, that is one thing. So never forget caustic injury. Caustic injury is always a possibility. So do you know what are the grading of dysphagia?
No, sir.
There is always a grading of dysphagia. Okay. First is the patient is able to swallow. Zero is patient has no dysphagia. Okay. 1, the patient is able to swallow both solids and liquids, but has a feeling of lump in the throat. Okay. 2, the patient is able to both solids and liquids, but solids only with the help of liquids, which is basically a semi-solid food. That is grade 2. Now grade 3 is basically patient is able to swallow only liquids and not solids. Grade 4 is both, not even saliva. This is one of the gradings that we use in our hospital. Okay. So that is grading of dysphagia. And regarding GRD, why GRD is important? Just you have to know regarding the triple therapy that we use in our hospital. Okay, the triple therapy that we commonly use is amoxicillin, omeprazole, and metronidazole. They say metronidazole has developed a very high resistance. They ask you to put on clarithromycin. I just want you to remember the dose of everything, because that they will commonly prescribe you. They will just put you on the advice of OGD-scopy, advice as triple therapy. You also won't put the proper dosing and you will discharge the patient. Okay. So it is amoxicillin 1 gram BD and clarithromycin 500 mg BD with an omeprazole, your standard dose. Okay. You will put it for 10 to 14 days. Okay. So that is one thing. And esophageal candidiasis again is one of the most common. And can you name one cause of pill-induced esophagitis?
Bisphosphonates, doctor.
Bisphosphonates is classical to produce a pill-induced esophagitis. And how do you prevent that?
Intake of more amount of water, and you have to ask the patient to sit for after intake of the pill.
Yes, it should be taken with a lot of water. It should be taken only on a sitting position. The patient should not lie down almost more than 45 minutes. He is not supposed to lie down. Okay. So again, never forget dysphagia as an acute presentation. That is what I wanted to tell you. Dysphagia, again, other acute causes, other acute could be foreign body. And other thing is, what is McLeod triad? Chest pain associated with recurrent vomiting
after
spontaneous emphysema because of esophageal rupture. Okay. Yeah, alcohol, esophageal rupture. Okay. So don't forget the emergency. Acute causes always. Acute is always acute. Chronic is always chronic. Chronic you can take time to treat. That is not a problem. So that is all from my side. Praveen.
Okay. Raghav almost told all the things which I wanted to tell. எல்லாமே சொல்லிட்டேன். ஸோ பேசிக்லி அக்யூட் காசஸ்ல சைல்ட்ல வருது அப்படின்னா ரொம்ப காமன் ஃபாரின் பாடி. ஓகேவா? நம்மளுக்கு அக்யூட் காஸ் வருது அப்படின்னா வி ஹேவ் டு திங்க் அபவுட் ஸ்ட்ரோக். லைக் பிரெயின் ஸ்டெம் ஸ்ட்ரோக்ஸ் ரொம்ப கேர்ஃபுல்லா பார்க்கணும். ஆப்வியஸ்லி யூ வில் பி ஏபிள் டு பிக் இட் அப் பிகாஸ் பேஷண்ட் வில் பி ஹேவிங் அதர் சிம்டம்ஸ் ஆஸ் வெல். ஓகே. இப்போ ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் ஆஃப் அக்யூட் ஒரு ஃபாரின் பாடி இருக்குன்னா யூஸ்வலி எண்டோஸ்கோபி போடணும். பட் எண்டோஸ்கோபி போடுறதுக்கு முன்னாடி தேர் கேன் பி ஒன் pharmacological therapy. Anyone? Which they use outside actually. One pharmacological therapy which can be given for acute dysphagia. Second year? Presenter, idea irukama? Okay, so basically they give glucagon. Okay va? Glucagon at the dose of 1 to 2 mg IV. Okay va? Kudutha, that is proven to relax the lower esophageal sphincter. Okay va? So that might aid passage of the whatever foreign body or food bolus, even food, bulky food, especially meat எல்லாம் எடுக்கிறப்போ தான் உங்களுக்கு acute dysphagia வரும். So you can try glucagon. In the meantime, you can prepare the patient for ஸ்கோபி ஆல்சோ. ஏன்னா ஸ்கோபி உடனே இருக்காது. யூ ஹேவ் டு ப்ரிப்பேர் த பேஷண்ட், ரெடி பண்ணணும், ஸ்கோபி ரூம் போகணும். அதுக்கு முன்னாடி யூ கேன் ட்ரை அ ஃபார்மகாலஜிக்கல் தெரப்பி. அட் ஜஸ்ட் ஒன் பாயிண்ட் ஆஃப் இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட். நம்ம இங்கே பண்றது இல்லை, பட் வெளியில தே ஆர் டூயிங் தட் அண்ட் தேர் ஆர் ரிசர்ச்சஸ் ஆல்சோ. அது பத்தி ஒன்று சொல்லணும்னு நினைச்சேன். அண்ட் தென் டிஸ்பேஜியா சும்மா மற்றதெல்லாம் வந்து ஆல்மோஸ்ட் எல்லாம் கிளினிக்கல் திங்ஸ் எல்லாமே ஏன்னோ ராகவ் டோல்டு. கொஞ்சம் தியரட்டிக்கல் இம்பார்ட்டன்ஸ் அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா டிஸ்பேஜியா அயோட்டிகா அப்படின்னு கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா? Have you heard of dysphagia aortica? Illa. So basically that is due to atheromatous, changes which occur in aorta, which can compress the esophagus, which usually occurs in elderly people. Okay, elderly people with severe atherosclerosis, dysphagia aortica can come. Okay, and இப்போ உள்ள ரொம்ப பேசிக்கா டிவைட் பண்ணோம்னா லூமன்ல ஏதாவது ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கான்னு பார்க்கணும். தென் யூ ஹேவ் டு see whether there is a problem with the vessel wall or not. வால்ல ரெண்டு இருக்கலாம். ஒன்னு ஸ்ட்ரக்சரலா உங்களுக்கு வந்து ஏதாவது கன்ஸ்ட்ரிக்ஷன், பேண்ட்ஸ் அதெல்லாம் இருக்கலாம். இல்ல ஃபங்க்ஷனலா மொட்டிலிட்டி டிசார்டர்ஸ் இருக்கலாம். அதுக்கு மேல வெளியில போனீங்க அப்படின்னா எக்ஸ்டென்சிவ் கம்ப்ரெஷன். எக்ஸ்டென்சிவ் கம்ப்ரெஷன் கேன் பி டியூ டு எனிதிங் வெளியில இருந்து. ஓகேவா? ஸோ இது பேஸ் பண்ணி நீங்க போனீங்க அப்படின்னா ஈஸியா கேட்ச் பண்ணிடலாம். அண்ட் அக்கிலேசியா பத்தி சொன்னீங்கல்ல. So again, ஒரு differentiating factor. Achalasia actually what happens?
There will be inhibitory neurons will be lost over there. So inhibition will be lost.
புரியல, மறுபடியும் சொல்லுங்க. Yeah.
Inhibitory neurons will be lost. So there will be loss of inhibition.
Okay.
And there will be no. And lower esophageal sphincter cannot relax.
Yeah, lower esophageal sphincter cannot relax, whereas மேல இருக்கிறது வந்து it will be dilated. ஓகேவா? கீழே இருக்கிறது கன்ஸ்ட்ரிக்ட் ஆயிருக்கும், மேல இருக்கிறது டைலேட் ஆயிருக்கும். ஓகேவா? இதுல நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா சிஸ்டமிக் ஸ்க்ளீரோசிஸ்லயும் பாத்தீங்கன்னா யூஸ்வலா லோவர் பார்ட் ஆஃப் த ஈசோஃபேகஸ் தான் இன்வால்வ் ஆயிருக்கும். ஓகே, சிஸ்டமிக் ஸ்க்ளீரோசிஸ் பேஷண்ட் கேன் பிரசன்ட் வித் டிஸ்பேஜியா. அதுக்கு ரீசன்ஸ் என்ன சொன்னீங்களா அதை பத்தி? ஓகே, சிஸ்டமிக் ஸ்க்ளீரோசிஸ்ல ரெண்டு இருக்கலாம். ஹலோ.
Hello sir.
So basically what happens is lower part of the esophagus alone will be involved in systemic sclerosis. ஓகேவா? ஸோ உங்களுக்கு லோவர் பார்ட்டுங்கும் போது ரெண்டு இஷ்யூ. ஒன்று ஈசோஃபேகல் ஸ்பிங்க்டரும் போயிடும். ஓகேவா? ஈசோஃபேகல் ஸ்பிங்க்டர் ஓன்ட் பி இது எங்களுக்கு யூஸ்வலி இட் ஓன்ட் பி ரிலாக்ஸ், இட் ஓன்ட் பி கன்ஸ்ட்ரிக்டட். நார்மலாக ஒரு டோன்ல கன்ஸ்ட்ரிக்ட் ஆகிருக்கும்ல. ஸோ அந்த கன்ஸ்ட்ரிக்ஷனும் போயிடும். அட் த சேம் டைம் மேலே பெரிஸ்டால்டிக் ஆக்டிவிட்டியும் போயிடும். ஸோ டோட்டலி இட்ஸ் லைக் பேரலிசிஸ் த என்டையர் லோவர் ஈசோஃபேகஸ். ஓகே, ஸோ தட் கேன் காஸ். இப்போ பெரிஸ்டால்சிஸ் ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கிறதுனால உங்களுக்கு சம் ப்ராப்ளம் இந்த லோவர் ஈசோஃபேகஸ், அந்த சென்சேஷன்ஸ் இந்த ஸ்டர்னம் ரெட்ரோஸ்டர்னமா உங்களுக்கு சம் அந்த டிஸ்பேஜியா சென்சேஷன்ஸ் இருக்கலாம். ரெண்டாவது வந்து டியூ டு இந்த எல்இஎஸ் வந்து ரிலாக்ஸ்டாவே இருக்கிறதுனால பேஷண்ட் வில் ஹாவ் ஜர்ட். ஓகேவா? ஜிஇஆர்டி இருந்துச்சுன்னா செகண்டரி டு ஜிஇஆர்டி டிஸ்பேஜியா கேன் ஆல்சோ கம். ஓகேவா? ஸோ அது சிஸ்டமிக் ஸ்க்ளீரோசிஸ் பேஷண்ட்ல வரலாம். அக்கலேசியான்னு பார்க்கும்போது சூடோ அக்கலேசியான்னு ஒரு கண்டிஷன் இருக்கு. சூடோ அக்கலேசியா இதுல வரலாம். ரெண்டு இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் திங்ஸ் மட்டும் ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கணும்.
Carcinoma.
Yeah, it is carcinoma. எல்லா கார்சினோமாவும் கார்சினோமா ஆஃப் ஈசோஃபேகஸ்னா ஓகே. அப்ப அப்பர் ஈசோஃபேகஸ்ல கார்சினோமா வந்தா சூடோ அக்கிலேசியாவா? Basically it's adenocarcinoma which occurs in the lower part of the esophagus. Okay, adenocarcinoma உங்களுக்கு கிராஸா தெரியலனாலும் ஈவன் ஒரு மைக்ரோஸ்கோபிக் கார்சினோமா இருந்துச்சுன்னா கூட it can go and affect the meyenteric plexus. ஓகேவா? ஸோ அதனால it can simulate achalasia. So they call it as pseudo achalasia. And another important condition is the infection. அது நீங்க எக்ஸாம்லயே படிச்சிருப்பீங்க, சாகாஸ் டிசீஸ். ஓகே, ஸோ சாகாஸ் டிசீஸ்ல உங்களுக்கு சூடோ அக்கிலேசியா வரலாம். இது எல்லாமே விட்டுட்டீங்க, கடைசியில பேஷண்ட்க்கு எதுவுமே இல்லை அப்படின்னா என்ன? பேஷண்ட் இஸ் கம்ப்ளைனிங் ஆஃப் இந்த மாதிரி டிஸ்பேஜியா, பட் எல்லாமே எவாலுவேட் பண்ணிட்டீங்க, பேஷண்ட்க்கு எதுவுமே இல்லை அப்படின்னா how will you classify the patient as? இத பத்தி சொன்னீங்களா? ஹலோ, கேக்குதா அம்மா?
Yes sir.
Okay, so if no thing is found, எதுவுமே இல்லை அப்படின்னா then we call it as functional. ஓகேவா? ஸோ ஃபங்க்ஷனல் அப்படிங்கிறது கடைசியாக தான். எல்லாத்தையும் ரூல் அவுட் பண்ணிட்டீங்க அப்படின்னா யூ கால் த டிஸ்பேஜியாஸ் ஃபங்க்ஷனல் டிஸ்பேஜியா. ஓகேவா? அதுக்கு ஒரு க்ரைட்டீரியா இருக்குது, ரோம்ஸ் க்ரைட்டீரியான்னு சொல்லிட்டு. ஸோ யூ ஹாவ் உங்களுக்கு பேஷண்ட்டுக்கு சென்சேஷன் ஆஃப் அந்த டிஸ்பேஜியா இருக்கணும் ஒன்று. இன்னொன்று வந்து யூ ஹாவ் டு ரூல் அவுட் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் திங்ஸ். 3 இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் திங்ஸ் என்ன அப்படின்னா மோட்டார், ஓகேவா, மோட்டார் அனாமலிஸ் எதுவுமே இருக்கக்கூடாது பேஷண்ட்க்கு. அதுக்கப்புறம் மியூகோசல் ஆர் ஸ்ட்ரக்சரல் சேஞ்சஸ் எதுவும் இருக்கக்கூடாது. இன்னொன்று ஜர்டி ஈசோஃபைகைட்டிஸ், அதாவது இன்ஃப்ளமேட்டரி கண்டிஷன்ஸ் எதுவும் இருக்கக்கூடாது. ஓகேவா? இது எல்லாமே இல்லை, பட் பேஷண்ட் இஸ் கம்ப்ளைனிங் ஃபார் சிம்டம்ஸ் ஃபார் 6 months இருக்கு, கண்டினியூஸாக 6 months இருக்கு, அட்லீஸ்ட் ஒன்ஸ் அ வீக் சிம்டம்ஸ் இருக்கு அப்படின்னா தென் யூ கேன் கிளாஸிஃபை தட் பேஷண்ட் அஸ் ஹேவிங் ஃபங்க்ஷனல் டிஸ்பேஜியா. ஓகேவா? லாஸ்ட் ஃப்ரம் எக்ஸாம் பாயிண்ட் ஆஃப் வியூ இதை மட்டும் தெரிஞ்சுக்கோங்க. மற்றபடி எல்லாமே கிளினிக்கலி ரிலவெண்ட் அண்ட் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் பாயிண்ட்ஸ். ஐ திங்க் யூ ஹாவ் கவர்ட் இட் வெரி வெல் அண்ட் ராகவ் ஆல்சோ ஹேஸ் ஆடட் ஆன் டு யூ. ஓகே, அண்ட் யா, இன்னொரு இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் திங் ராகவ் டோல்ட் அபவுட் காமன் காஸ் ஆஃப் செஸ்ட் பெயின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. டிஃப்யூஸ் ஈசோஃபேஜியல் ஸ்பேசம்ல ஒரு இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் திங் ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கணும். என்னன்னு தெரியுமா? டிஇஎஸ் அண்ட் ஆன்ஜைனா ஒரு லிங்க் இருக்கு. என்னன்னு தெரியுமா? நீங்க ஆன்ஜைனா மிமிக்ஸ்ல பாத்தீங்கன்னா டிஃப்யூஸ் ஈசோஃபேஜியல் ஸ்பேசம் கொடுத்துருப்பான். ஏன் அப்படின்னா பேஷண்ட் வில் டிபிக்கலி கம்ப்ளைன் அந்த ரெட்ரோஸ்டர்னல் செஸ்ட் பெயின். ஓகேவா? பட் த மோஸ்ட் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் திங் இஸ் இஃப் த பேஷண்ட் டேக்ஸ் நைட்ரோகிளிசரின், ஓகே, டிஇஎஸ் வில் ஆல்சோ கோ அவே. டிஃப்யூஸ் ஈசோஃபேஜியல் ஸ்பேசம்க்கு ஒன் ஆஃப் த ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் இஸ் நைட்ரோகிளிசரின். ஓகேவா? ஸோ நைட்ரோகிளிசரின் கொடுத்தீங்க அப்படின்னா பேஷண்ட் வந்து செஸ்ட் பெயின் ரிலீவ் ஆயிரும். ஓகே, ஸோ தட் வில் பி வெரி கன்ஃபியூஸ்ட் வித் ஆன்ஜைனா. ஏன்னா ஆன்ஜைனாக்கும் நீங்க வந்து நைட்ரோகிளிசரின் தான் கொடுப்பீங்க. ஓகேவா? நைட்ரோகிளிசரின் கொடுத்தா ஆன்ஜினாவும் போயிடும், பட் டிஇஎஸும் போயிடும். ஸோ தட் இஸ் வை வி ஆல்வேஸ் ஷுட் டேக் அ இசிஜி. ஓகே, whenever, even if you think that the patient is having atypical chest pain, always take an ECG, okay, to rule out cardiovascular cause. ஓகேவா? அவ்வளோதான்மா, என் சைடில் அவ்வளோதான். செகண்ட் இயர்ஸ் ஃபைனல் இயர்ஸ் வேற யாராவது?
That's what as he said.
ஹலோ,
டிராகன் சொல்லுங்க.
ஹலோ. சப்போஸ் இப்போ ப்ரெசென்டார், சப்போஸ் இப்போ எல்லாமே அவாய்ட் பண்ணிட்டீங்க, எதுவுமே இல்லை, இந்த மாதிரி இருக்கு. எப்படின்னா வந்து வாலண்டரியா இனிஷியேட் பண்ண முடியல, ஆனா இன்வாலண்டரியா வந்து அவங்களால எல்லாம் பண்ண முடியுது அப்படின்னா என்ன யோசிப்பீங்க? ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் வந்து இப்போ அவங்கள ஸ்மைல் பண்ண சொன்னா ஸ்மைல் பண்ண மாட்டாங்க, க்ரை பண்ண சொன்னா க்ரை பண்ண மாட்டாங்க, ஆனா எமோஷனலா ஏதாவது ஸ்டிமுலேட் கொடுத்தீங்கன்னா க்ரை பண்ணுவாங்க, இல்லை ஏதாவது சிரிக்கிற மாதிரி சொன்னீங்கன்னா ஸ்மைல் பண்ணுவாங்க. இந்த மாதிரி இருந்தா என்ன யோசிப்பீங்க? இந்த மாதிரி கேஸ் ஒரு டிஸ்பேஜ் எவ்வளவு ப்ரெசென்ட் ஆகலாம்? அது வந்து அப்ராக்சியா வந்து பக்கோஃபேஷியல் அப்ராக்சியா, அதுவும் நீங்க மைண்ட்ல வச்சுக்கோங்க. பட் வெரி ரேர் காஸ், சும்மா ஒரு இன்ட்ரெஸ்டாக சொல்றேன். நியூராலஜிக்கல் காஸ் ஆஃப் டிஸ்பேஜியா. அப்புறம் வந்துட்டு அது வந்து இட் இஸ் ஆல்சோ கால்ட் அஸ் என்னது, இது வந்து ஒரு ஆன்டீரியர் ஒப்பர்குலம் சிண்ட்ரோம். அதை பத்தி படிங்க. ஆன்டீரியர் ஒப்பர்குலம் சிண்ட்ரோம் அது கொஞ்சம் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கா இருக்கும். எப்படின்னா பேஷண்ட் நம்ம வந்து சொன்னோம்னா செய்ய மாட்டாங்க, ஆனா இன்வாலண்டரியா செய்வாங்க. அந்த மாதிரி இப்போ அப்ராக்சியா என்ன, டிசார்டர் ஆஃப் லேர்ன்டு பிஹேவியர். அதே மாதிரி இப்போ ஒரு சில கேஸ் ரிப்போர்ட்ஸ்ல வந்து சாலோவிங் அப்ராக்சியா கூட இருக்குன்னு சொல்றாங்க. ஆனா அது வந்து ட்ரூ அப்ராக்சியா இல்லை அப்படிங்கிறாங்க. ஏன்னா சாலோவிங் வந்து ஒரு லேர்ன்டு ஸ்கில் இல்லை, அது வந்து அப்படியே வந்துருது, ஒரு வெஜிடேட்டிவ் மாதிரி அது லேர்னிங், அதெல்லாம் வந்து லேர்ன்டு இல்லை. பட் ஸ்டில் என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா சாலோவிங் அப்ராக்சியா கூட வரலாம். அதே மாதிரி வந்து டிஸ்பேஜியான்னு பேசும்போது போஸ்ட் ஸ்ட்ரோக் டிஸ்பேஜியா, அது வந்து ரொம்ப முக்கியம். போஸ்ட் ஸ்ட்ரோக் டிஸ்பேஜியா அதுல பாத்தீங்கன்னா இப்போ கார்டிக்கல், சப்கார்டிக்கல், பிரெயின் ஸ்டெம், இதுல பார்க்கும்போது ஃபர்ஸ்ட் பிரெயின் ஸ்டெம் தான், அதுக்கப்புறம் வந்து சப்கார்டிக்கல், அப்புறம் வந்து கார்டிக்கல். இந்த ஆர்டர்ல தான் வந்து போஸ்ட் ஸ்ட்ரோக் டிஸ்பேஜியா வரும். அது ஆல்மோஸ்ட் பாத்தீங்கன்னா 45% ஆஃப் போஸ்ட் ஸ்ட்ரோக் கேசஸ்ல டிஸ்பேஜியா வருது. அதனால கூட அந்த டிஸ்பேஜினால கூட ஒரு சில பேர் வந்து டிஸ்சார்ஜ் ஆகாம இன்னும் சரியாகல அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு இருப்பாங்க. ஸோ அதுவும் வந்து ஒரு முக்கியமான ஒரு விஷயம். அதுக்கப்புறம் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா இப்போ மயஸ்தீனியா கிராவிஸ் இந்த மாதிரி இருக்குன்னா சில ஸ்ட்ரென்தனிங் இது கூட பண்ணி அது பண்ணலாம். அந்த மாதிரியும் சில எக்ஸசைசஸ் கூட இருக்கு டிஸ்பேஜியாக்கு. அப்புறம் எலக்ட்ரிக்கல் ஸ்டிமுலேஷன் அதெல்லாம் இருக்கு. அப்புறம் கிரிக்கோதைராய்டு மயாட்டமி, இதெல்லாம் நான் சொல்றது வந்து நியூரோஜெனிக் டிஸ்பேஜியாஸ்க்கு சொல்லிட்டு இருக்கேன். அப்புறம் நீங்க இது சொன்னீங்கல்ல டிஸ்பேஜியா இருக்கு, இப்போ டிஸ்பேஜியா வித் வீக்னஸ் ஆஃப் லிம்ஸ் அப்படின்னா என்னெல்லாம் யோசிப்பீங்க? இப்போ நீங்க சொன்னீங்க அப்ளோபரஞ்சியல் மஸ்குலர் டிஸ்ட்ரோபியில ப்ராக்சிமல் லிம்பிக்னஸ் வருது, அது ஒன்று. ஓகே, வேற
endocrine disorders, Cushingoid syndrome,
ஓகே
thyroid disorders like.
ஓகே. ஜிபிஎஸ்ல வரலாமா டிஸ்பேஜியா?
என்ன சார்?
ஜிபிஎஸ் கில்லன்பெரி சிண்ட்ரோம்ல.
GBS.
கில்லன்பெரி சிண்ட்ரோம்ல
yes, sir.
டிஸ்பேஜியா வருதுன்னா திங்க் ஆஃப் மில்லர் ஃபிஷர் வேரியன்ட். அது வந்து இட்ஸ் மோர் காமன். டிஸ்பேஜியா வந்து கிளாசிக்கல் கில்லன்பெரியோட மில்லர் ஃபிஷர் வேரியன்ட் ஆஃப் கில்லன்பெரியில வந்து காமனா வரும் டிஸ்பேஜியா. அதுக்கப்புறம் வந்து நம்ம சென்ட்ரல் பாண்டைன் மெலினோசிஸ், அதை மறந்துடக்கூடாது. டிஸ்பேஜியாவோட வீக்னஸோட டிஸ்ஆர்த்ரியா வல்வார் வீக்னஸோட சேர்ந்து குவாட்ரிப்ளீஜியா மாதிரி வருது அப்படின்னா அது நம்ம சென்ட்ரல் பாண்டைன் மெலினோசிஸ். பட் இதெல்லாம் வந்து டிஸ்பேஜியா வந்து ப்ரெசென்ட் ஆகாது. டிஸ்பேஜியா வந்து அசோசியேட்டடா இருக்கு. சும்மா ஒரு இதுக்காக இன்ட்ரெஸ்டாக சொல்றேன். ஓகேம்மா, என்னோட பார்ட்ல அவ்வளவுதான்.
ஓகேம்மா, ஆக்சுவலி பிரவீன் சொன்னது ஏன் முக்கியம்னா, செஸ்ட் பெயினுக்கும் வந்து நைட்ரேட்ஸ் both will relieve diffuse esophageal spasm as well as your angina. Why is important is, if you ask a surgical gastroenterologist, what they say is, most of the cases நீங்க வந்து பேஷண்ட்டுக்கு ரெக்கரண்டா செஸ்ட் பெயின் வந்துட்டே இருக்கும். பேஷண்ட்டை ஒரு தடவையும் என்ன பண்ணுவோம், நீ அன்ஸ்டேபிள் ஆஞ்சினா பேஷண்ட் இஸ் நோன் கேஸ் ஆஃப் சிஐடின்னு போட்டு அட்மிஷன் போட்டு டிஸ்சார்ஜ் பண்ணிட்டே இருப்பீங்க. பேஷண்ட்டுக்கு சிஏஜி எல்லாம் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். சிஏஜி பண்ணினா your coronary should be absolutely normal. Still, if the patient keeps presenting to you again and again with chest pain, you have to take a proper barium solo or a contrast at the time of the pain. That is why when you will see diffuse esophageal spasm, because diffuse esophageal spasm is always misdiagnosed. ஒரு சாதாரண டிஃப்யூஸ் esophageal spasmக்கு நீ தேவையில்லாம பேஷண்ட்டை சிஏடின்னு போட்டு சிஏஜி வரைக்கும் பண்ணி திரும்ப அந்த பேஷண்ட் அட்மிட் ஆகிட்டே தான் இருக்கும், அன்ஸ்டேபிள் ஆஞ்சினா. ஓகேவா? ஸோ தட் இஸ் ஆல்வேஸ் ரிமெம்பர் தட். ஸோ நெக்ஸ்ட் இஸ் சிம்பிளா சொல்ல போனோம்னா, this patient, if a patient is having dysphagia for solids, predominantly solids, it is always a fractural lesion. Depends on the grading of obstruction. Again, the lumen is completely blocked, again you will have both, but predominantly what they say is the dysphagia for solids, structural. Dysphagia both liquids and solids, it's propulsive, can be because of both neurogenic and myogenic. And remember, achalasia is not only for liquids, both liquids and solids. Okay, so that is what I wanted to tell. Second is, any points? Rajani sir, anyone else? I think we'll close off then. Very nice presentation, ma. Thank you.
Thank you.